the whole point of this roundtable discussion is for us to chat with our community and answer just sort of off the cuff conversations that you want us to engage in that will help you make an informed voting decision. And before we get started,
We're waiting for Renee. She is having technical issues,
yeah, I thought
which
so.
is always a good sign because that means we're going to have a good night. Because every time Renee begins technical issues, we have a great night and answer a lot of questions.
And Mercury's in retrograde, so it's no surprise, is it?
Correct. Tradition,
So
and it must happen.
I want to just explain what Change281 started with, because we do have some new people on tonight. And so Eric and Renee and I are all running our own individual campaigns for school board, but there were a number of issues that collectively we were very aligned on. And so what we decided to do was form this sort of coalition of Change281, which was really to sort of sweep out the incumbents and sweep us in as like-minded people who were very fiscally oriented. So Eric and Renee and I are not educators by nature, like we're not teachers in our backgrounds. I have an MBA, Eric's a financial advisor. Renee is a former governor of Crystal and also a former school board member. And so back in the 90s, she already helped our school district solve problems that are very similar to what we're facing right now. And so together we found that the likeness, like the like-mindedness between us was important. And we felt that the culture change that the community was really looking for would be best represented by sort of us working together to get on the board. And then ensuring that some of the incumbents that have sort of rubber stamped our deficit spending and all the things that got us into the financial issues that we have today would be sort of moved on to their next endeavors. And Eric, I'd invite you to add anything more to that on like why you joined the slate or, that type of thing.
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing is when it comes to running, it's always better to run as a team with other folks that are like-minded than to try to do it by yourself. I mean, I'm getting close to 200 different campaigns that I've been a part of. And, when you're going it alone, it's very, very lonely and very, very hard. But when you're doing it with a group of people, particularly when that group has different approaches to the campaign, things that I'm good at, like me and my team, we're very good at online, and we do the blogging, and we're very good at that. And there are other folks that are phenomenal on ground game and are okay with that ground game, that door knocking, that waving signs on the corner, and that kind of stuff. So everybody it just seemed like there was a lot of synergy, and everybody brought team members that kind of cross paths. So it wasn't like there was like a ton of overlap, which is very, very rare when you're running as a team. So yeah, very, very happy with that. There was one question that was already up.
Yeah.
Did you see that one? Did you want me to address that, or did you want to address it?
Well, I'm really hoping that we can get Renee on, because I think that would be appreciated, but we can go ahead and start because I don't want to waste anybody's time. So we've explained what we are as a group, that we are each running our individual campaigns, but together what we want to do is shift the culture on the board. And we have a lot of big things in front of us. One is hiring the new superintendent. And I feel very strongly that needs to be a competitive search. It needs to be a nationwide search and not just a rubber stamp of our interim superintendent, who was hired by our previous superintendent. So, I feel like if she's the best person for the job, then she's going to stand up against these other candidates that we can bring in from both, a wide local search and a national search. So that's definitely one of them. And we have to get our kids back to school. How that happens and when that happens, we're still working through as a community and how we feel about that as a community. I received an email last night that we are still planning a November start date for elementary kids. It's not going to be full time now. It's going to be hybrid. I'm not sure by the time we actually get there it will even be that. But November 16th was the date that was put out last night at 6 o'clock. And I am concerned for families that have childcare issues, and it doesn't include middle schoolers. It doesn't include high schoolers. This is just our elementary age kids. And they'd have an A-B schedule for 2 days a week. I feel like it's the worst of both worlds, Eric, because I feel like we're exposing our families to risk by sending our kids to school 2 days a week. And for those kids that are families that are opting for distance learning as their school, they're going to lose their teachers, they're going to lose their community to have to move into a district devised distance learning school that isn't the school that they started the school year in. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about that, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a challenge. Where, looking at my kids attend Meadow Lake Elementary School, and one of the challenges there is that a large chunk of our kids come from multifamily housing, where it's extremely difficult for families that live in multifamily to protect their kids, because you're living and you're sharing air, you're sharing space. So those kids and those families have to really try hard to protect themselves. And then on top of it, we're going to put them all in school together where, again, some families are very strong on the mask wearing and hand washing and stuff. And other families, they may be choosing on the fact of, we're going to be okay. And that's neither a right or a wrong. I mean, I have my own opinion on it, but we're American. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes down to it. But when you put everybody, all these different views, all of these different values in the same building, without a solid plan on how you're going to mitigate things, I get really scared really fast. And you only need to look at my alma mater school district of District 11. I'm a graduate of Anoka Senior High School, and they're getting ready to go back into distance learning format because, they brought their kids, they put them in the schools, kids are now getting sick. It really only takes a classroom or two, and when you throw in specialists, it doesn't even take that. Before you were there for a few weeks, now you're back home having to adjust. Parents are having to once again move their work back into home, if they're even able to do that, and it makes a huge difference. The other thing, couple of pieces, is in the northwest suburbs, a very large group of our folks parents are in industries where they are directly impacted by COVID. We have a huge additive manufacturing base in the Twin Cities, and particularly the Northwest Twin Cities. We have healthcare workers galore, and those folks are more likely to be harmed by COVID and potentially bring it home to their families without even knowing that that's the case. Finally, in zip code 55428, which is where I live, we have the highest number of positive tests in the county. And 55428 includes kids that attend Meadow Lake Elementary. And that just kind of scares me. Do we know? I know that they say that it's not as impactful on children, but it is impactful on children of color. We've had children of color that have passed away from getting that. And Meadow Lake is disproportionately children of color, which is awesome. It's disproportionately international, and disproportionately kids that come from multifamily housing, which makes us strong eagles, but it puts our kids at risk.
So we've got Renee on the call now, so I'll let Renee respond to that too, Renee. We're talking about the topics of, you know, what is in front of us as new school board members right now. We're just getting started with the idea of, you know, needing to hire a new superintendent and bringing our kids back to school, which outside of the finances, right, are our other two sort of shared platform issues. And I think you're unmuted, and if you'd like to respond to that, that would be great. Thank you.
Sounds good. Yeah, bringing the kids back to school, the numbers are just really not in our favor. So I, you know, I just want everyone to be safe, and I want these kids to not be terrified and terrorized at inconsistencies with adults. So we just need to make a decision, and we need to move forward, and we need to embrace our kids and let them know you're not going to be forgotten. We're going to get through this. I mean, that's been the frustrating part for me, is that we owe it to these children to at least make them feel sort of safe and secure in who's running the show.
Mhm.
But I can only imagine what happens when these emails come out and the conversations that go on in those homes. And so we need to make a decision. We need to go from there. We need to fix it. We need to improve it. We need to do what we need to do instead of standing at the fringes, sort of pointing our fingers at state numbers that may or may not be working, or state people, or those kind of things. So that's my opinion on going forward with the getting into schools. And what was the other one? So it was getting into the schools in the
the superintendent selection process.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy. As every day has gone by in this campaign, I'm just really reminded at the importance of bringing in some leadership that's going to work with this community instead of uh, being so lightweight in their communication. Nothing's being said, nothing. So it really points to the fact that leadership, to me, is dead in the water in the school district, and the quicker we can get on with forming a committee, with talking about what we need to talk about to look for a superintendent, the healthier this district becomes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's turn to some of our topics that the participants are suggesting. So from Mr. Ron, we have what are your top 2 issues that you will address and how? Maybe we just covered that, but if you don't have any other top 2 issues outside of finances, and maybe this is a great time for us to introduce the finance piece of it. But Renee, what are your top 2 issues that you'd like to address?
I'm sorry, I was being distracted by the fact that for some odd reason my video doesn't work, but so I'm going to stop being distracted. Top 2 things for me, is that what you're asking for?
Yeah. Yep. Top 2 things that you'll address as a board member and how.
Probably the first thing, well, obviously the money. I mean, nobody even needs to ask that anymore of me.
Yep.
We need to knuckle down, get in there, get some homework done, look where we're at, that kind of stuff. The other thing that I find really important is I really want to focus on the staff that are left within the district, to make sure what we're doing with our staffing, how we're caring for our people. If our staffing is correct, what are our that kind of the staffing issue. And then probably the most important is the care of the parents, the caregivers, the adults in charge of the kids that are attending our schools right now. This is a really trying time for everybody. And this is to me, a time when I believe that school districts, or a school district, can sort of rise and shine and be the comfort kind of in our community, because school systems have such an incredible reach into our homes. And I would like to see us doing what we can to not only help the parents or the teachers through the pandemic and onward, but really to get some help out there to the folks in our homes. If that even includes getting some outside resources that we can bring in, those kind of things. I think we need to focus on the family life of our kids.
Mm-hmm. And Eric, I would pose that same question to you then. What are your top two? I know we all share finances, but outside of finance.
Yeah, outside of finance, for me, it's always been about making sure that we're reporting to the public and to our parents what our goals are.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've talked on numerous occasions, a balanced scorecard is how you go about doing that. And it's a very simple communication tool. Red, yellow, green. And the key thing is getting a board to come to loggerheads over what are the highest priorities for the district.
Yep.
What are our priorities? And then let the public weigh in on that to determine whether or not that's their priority. And then every single month, report back to them. This is how we're making progress towards this. That way, there's no doubt. They go to the district website, the scorecard is there. How is my district doing? It's right there in plain English, in a language that they can understand. I think the second thing that, what?
I was going to say in plain English and with actual numbers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's number E's too. Being in financial services, there's number E's where people will kind of put numbers in a means, and I think we've kind of all experienced that with the budget discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So the numbers are bad, but you can make any numbers look good if you massage them enough.
Right.
Yep.
The key thing is the numbers tell a story. And if you can't read the story with the numbers that you're provided, then someone's trying to tell you a lie.
Right.
If the numbers that you get seem to match the reality that's around you and seem to match the story of what's going on in the building, then we're on track for what it is we want to do. But it's up to the board to define what those goals are going to be. And I think for me, the next thing after that, obviously, once you can establish a balanced scorecard that we're going to measure the superintendent on, then it's just hiring that superintendent.
Yep.
And I would prefer a superintendent that has practical teaching experience, that has worked in a multi-ethnic school district, that is not a marketer, but is someone that has a real heart for children and has a heart for teachers and has a heart for staff, and is going to be spending a large chunk of their time out in the schools and letting their assistants handle the meetings. Because I think a good leader is in the trenches with the soldiers.
So I will just add on to what you just said, Eric. Thank you for that. I also want a superintendent that has fiscal savvy. I want a superintendent that understands what it means to create a budget and has to make those priority choices and those tough choices that puts our students, our staff, and our teachers and educators at the first and foremost of this district, and that will be a good financial steward of our district resources. And we definitely have not had that, which is the reason why there was an audit that was called for, petitioned for by concerned parents and other community members in the group. And of our next why it's so important for us to run for this election is the same people that hired the last superintendent are the same people that are now slated to hire the next superintendent if nothing changes. If we don't make some changes to the board, if we don't get new blood onto that board, the same people that hired the person that drove us into the dirt financially are the same people that are going to hire the next one. So for me, it's really, really, really important. We can't right the ship without changing the leadership. And that's one of the big things that I've said throughout this campaign is leadership matters. Mm-hmm. And again, the three of us we're coming from very different backgrounds than the incumbents who are up for re-election right now. And it's, for me, one of the most important things to communicate to an audience like this is that your vote matters. for the next 4 years, well, at least the next 2 years, and definitely for the next 4 years for the people who are getting in on this cycle. And we have big decisions to make. Last year, we were just $60,000 out of our whole big budget for RSI. We're one of the biggest districts in the Twin Cities. $60,000 away from being taken over by state receivership. It's called statutory operating debt, where we're operating at a deficit budget for so long that we've drawn down our reserves, and our schools are no longer able to produce enough student revenue. Like, we don't have enough students to cover our expenses, and students are leaving our district in droves. Right now, they're going to private school, they're going to other districts, they're going to PSEO if they're in the high school range to do so. We are in a very unhealthy place financially, and I think that bringing in candidates that will be able to help right that ship is the right thing to do. So while there are candidates on that are up for election that are teachers and educators, they aren't necessarily going to come at it from the same perspective of the three of us, which are going to ask the tough questions. So why do we need this? Does this serve our needs? How does this meet our goals, which will actually have goals, which will be great, like SMART goals, right? They're specific, they're measurable, they are time bound. We have the ability to say, this is what we're going to do for you, community, because you put us in office to represent you. So
Yeah.
I feel kind of passionate about that. The closer, like the more communications that I'm seeing from our district representatives right now, it's nothing. We're getting so much vagary that there's no way to make decisions on it. So I'm sorry, I got on my soapbox there for a minute.
No. And I think that it has, things like that have to be said. If they're not said, nothing will get done. And a large chunk of the current board are insiders. I mean, these are people from the from within the educational industry. And things are this bad.
Yeah.
So the thing that you gotta remember is that when you go on to websites for National School Board Associations, one of the very things they say is that as a school board member, you're not representing the inside interests of the organization. Our first and foremost task is to represent the interests of the community that we live in, and to represent you, the voters, and our children, and the interests of the employers who are going to make use of our graduates once they get out of high school. That's where our focus should be. We should not be engaged in the inside baseball. We should be on the outside of the baseball, looking at the game and saying, is this game being played within the budget? Is this being played within the regulation? And are the community needs being met? We do those three things, we have an effective board. But when the entire board are insiders, you run into problems. And you're seeing that just in corporate America alone, where you'll have corporate boards and they're all CEOs and they're all from the same industry. And everyone's wondering why that company is being run into the ground. It's because you don't have those outside voices there at the table. We're going to be your outside voice. We're going to be the very loud voice that's representing the community that's been ignored for the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's great, Eric. So let's move on. Thank you for that. To our next question, which is a good one, actually. So do each of you have an idea or a passion for community committees that you'd like to be assigned to? This is a good one. So Renee, I'll go back to you since Eric and I have been bantering a little bit. Let's start with you. You've been on the school board before, so you probably have a lot more inside information into how some of those committees operate. But how what would you be interested in beyond our board service in general to get engaged in?
Yes, one of the things that I would like to, actually, this is a revival. It's not a brand new idea. Uh, but at the turn of the century, and yes, that sounds aged, uh, we had initiatives across the school district called We Care About Kids. And what we did at that time was we looked at the community assets that were available that promoted learning, that promoted safety, that promoted understanding, that promoted all these very positive attributes in a child's life that then leads to greater success. It was based on a great deal of research that I suspect still holds true. So in sort of this sort of fairy tale fashion, we had these wonderful community-wide meetings where we had council people and mayors from, Robbinsdale, New Hope, Crystal, Golden Valley, Plymouth, and we were all working together to see how we could build additional assets. And one of the things we did in the city of Crystal was we opened up our, obviously pre-pandemic, but we opened up our community center to after school for high school age kids. So high school age kids had a place to come
Nice.
and work on academics. There were computers that the school district put in there. I believe they even staffed it. It was a great resource for kids. Keeps them off the street, give them something to do. They can work on their homework. So that's just one example. And I think that when you talk about community policing, when you talk about enrichments to a community, when you talk about community at all, we have over the last 20 years walked away from our children, in my personal opinion. And I would really love to serve on a committee that would work to organize asset building among all the governing bodies within the school district.
Thank you, Renee. Eric, how about you? What kind of committees? There's a whole slate of committees that various board members participate with. But is there anything new that you would add, or what are you interested in?
Yeah, for me, I have a passion around money. So anything to do with finance, I really would like to be a liaison to the community finance committee that advises, to be a part of that important work and to be able to work with the community members that are part of that. It's such a passion of mine. It's been my work for the last 4 years, and I just want to continue to do and be a part of that. The other thing that I would like to be a part of is, I kind of see my role as kind of figure out how to build equity within the district.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks kind of look at it as, how do we get Black students more successful? It's more to it than that. It is, how do we get the kids that are struggling the most within school to perform at a higher level this year than they did the prior year? So any committees that would enable me to have a strategic voice in growing that's key. One of the things is that when it comes to community-oriented boards, I would want to be more of a listener than a participant. To be there to help provide strategic understanding of kind of how the board thinks. But yeah, that's kind of how I would view myself, as more listening, getting that information down, finding out what the ideas from the community are, and then bringing those back to the board. Sometimes when I hear, in various district to district, sometimes the chair will appoint members, or whoever the senior person is will appoint us to whatever committees need to be appointed to. I just hope that someone has mercy and sticks beyond the money side, because I really have a passion. Budgets don't bug me. I like looking at them.
And let me add, this is Renee, let me add, I think this new board should include everybody at every budget session at this point. I think that if it isn't inclusive, if we don't have all that paperwork on the table for all of us to all be working on it jointly, which I think is really critical, that has been our uniting thing, that we will we all need to be at that table, all of us helping to solve the budget problems in the open.
Yeah. So I would, for me, I have a couple passions. One of the reasons that I'm running for school board is because, and Renee and Eric both know this, but I have a child who has special needs. Not so much anymore now that he's a junior, but when he was 16 months old, he was diagnosed with autism, and I received services throughout his pre-K, um, uh, his whole pre-K journey, so that by the time that he got to kindergarten, he was able to attend a traditional kindergarten setting. And so that was just such a gift to him and to me, our family. He's going to live a really great and wonderful life because we caught him so early in not in a kindergarten screening, but way before. And so for me, I would love to be part of the special education committee. I'd love to be part of the Seven Dreams, a liaison to Seven Dreams from the board. That to me, being able to equip our teachers in our classrooms with the tools that they need to be able to just teach and not have to worry about going out and buying supplies and doing other things.
Wow, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, to
That
me,
is ridiculous.
that's just a huge hole in my heart when I think about teachers spending, they're already underpaid, and then them having to go out and get that. And I don't know if this committee exists or not, but I would introduce it as a potential topic. Eric, this is building off of what you said, right? I think we need to update our unified vision for the district and our equity policies to get some real teeth into those, something that we can hold our administration accountable for. Those would be 3 areas of interest for me.
Yeah, I think we lack a coherent equity strategy.
We do. We don't have a strategy. We have platitudes on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and that's not a strategy. A strategy is we will do A, B, and C by X date.
Yes.
And that is so critical. So it's kind of like a lot of what we're talking about is kind of found throughout all of the current standing committees. But I think each one of us has kind of a passion for where our talents take us.
And there are others, and I think school board members typically serve on like 3 to 5 subcommittees outside of the board, or they liaison to other community committees outside of the board. So those are a couple of mine. But let's move on to our next topic.
Can you just add one thing also, though?
Sure.
Is that the first year to year and a half is also going to be really focused on some of the issues first. You know what I'm saying? That some of the committee work may have to take not a secondary role, but certainly the amount of work that needs to be done in the budgetary stuff and unlocking some of those basics is going to be huge in that first year. So I caution my slate mates to let's be realistic.
Oh, absolutely. And you've got the concept of the COVID recovery is going to be key. And then there's the law. It's just this first year is going to be spending a long time kind of digging out. And this is every district across the state of Minnesota is going to be engaged in similar work of digging ourselves out of the hole we have found ourselves in. But the good news is that we can do it. We're all in the same boat together, and there's another legislative session this coming year, and we can go to them with specific asks to add to the varying bills so that we can get these things funded.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, none of this is possible, right, without funding. I mean, obviously we can still liaison with other
Right.
community committees, right? But for us to fix our district, we have to start with the finances first,
Yep.
because without that, we can't hire the custodial staff we need to reopen our buildings. We can't, like, nothing's possible without
Right.
the money.
We can't
And
retain the teachers. We can't retain the teachers. We
we
can't.
can't put pineapple on pizza, like none of
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Is it okay? So we've lost this year the equivalent of one building of children.
Yep.
That is a terrifying thought to me.
It's not just this one year, it's since 2016. So if we just like the actual numbers are, we've lost 709 net students in our district since the 2016-2017 school year, according to the S&P report that came out 2 weeks ago. So that's a number I think that we can count on. It could be more than that, depending on when the actual data was collected, given the COVID situation. And I know from personal account that people have been pulling their kids out of the district left and right, because of how the confusion and the upset around how we have not reopened. Will we reopen? Won't we reopen? Are their kids safe? So we'll call it 709. And you're right, Eric. That's a school building's worth of students.
And then on top of that, we have parents that have kind of opted their kids out of kindergarten this year. You know, they're like, okay, we would have gone to kindergarten this year. We're going to wait until there's a vaccine and things are back to
Yes.
normal, which is a reasonable thing for a parent of a little one to do, because kindergarten, when you start the kid, within a year or two is what matters. And so we've got time on that front. But it does impact the head count within the district. Now, what I'm interested in and what we haven't received are engagement numbers from the district. Of the kids that are enrolled with technology, what percentage by school are logging in during the school day?
Yeah, there's no transparency on what we consider attendance numbers, right? Is what you're describing, Eric. Yeah, there's no transparency there. I was telling Renee last night that we received an email with like a COVID dashboard that came out. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was supposed to be a weekly update, and there hasn't been any updates since that original one that came out. So it's just been a very sort of herky-jerky communication process with the administration and the board to help us understand what it is that parents are supposed to be deciding on. And even that COVID dashboard didn't break it down to the school level. So maybe Armstrong was the entire hotspot, or maybe it was Meadow Lake, or maybe it was, Pilgrim Lane. We have no idea. So as parents, how do we make decisions based on like the vaguest information they can give us? But I appreciate this conversation. I want to keep moving on so that we address people's questions. The next question that's up to us is about district finances, and the email that came out that laid out this very rosy picture of our school board and our administrators being good financial stewards of our taxpayer money, and that being contradicted by the attachment that they put, the S&P report that they put in the same email. If maybe they thought nobody would read it, but it definitely was not. It painted nothing rosy about our district, and Moody's has downgraded us twice as our bond rating twice in the last couple of years. And with a negative outlook, and S&P also had a negative outlook on the financial forecast for our district. So, I mean, with all of that said, what's your opinion on the current state of the finances? I feel like we've covered it, but just give yourself a minute and just touch on that. And Eric, if you want to go first this time, please do.
Yeah, I mean, that is my background. So I began as a bond analyst, and Moody's and S&P are the standards. Moody's, the Moody analysis is usually what you're looking at primarily when you're examining a bond issue to determine the quality of it. So the fact that Moody's downgraded means that they don't have confidence in the leadership, and they don't have confidence in the numbers that they're seeing. I mean, they have a very transparent process. If you go to Moody's and you look at their process, either you meet their numbers or you don't meet their numbers. Yep. And again, getting an increase in your rating is simply a matter of good governance and good stewardship. Yep. That's it. Over time, they'll give you credit if you haven't gotten there, but you're making the right decisions to get there over time. They'll upgrade you based on that.
And Renee, your thoughts?
Well, I've certainly not kept my thoughts secret on this issue over the last 3 months. So, but what I really want to add is that to me, it's just extremely inexcusable to have people managing money in such a lackadaisical fashion, in a way that seems whimsical, in a way that seems to say, how dare you ask? It's so unacceptable to read through board meeting minutes and see where people raised their hand and said, look, we're in trouble, we need to make this better, and the board refused to act. So it is about the money. If we want anything in the district, it is about the money, and it is the one thing that we're going to have to work on, one of two things, the money and the superintendent thing that first year.
Can I add to what you're saying, Renee? It wasn't just people. It was the board's own financial advisory committee, right?
It was the financial advisory committee, other employees, when we've had a lot of employees come and kind of talk to us. And so, where expertise within the district wasn't listened to. So yeah, it was expertise from legitimate groups. Like the Financial Advisory Council was initiated as a legitimate group to help advise the board. And when the board snubbed them repeatedly over the last couple of years, to me it says, look, can we just stop talking about how insane this is and recognize the fact that this is just insane behavior that needs to be fixed? So
it's not, again, the key thing to remember is that money is not their specialization. These are folks with doctorates and masters in education. There's education policy, and then there's the management, the business side of managing the taxpayers' money. And those are two different skill sets. They're both important skill sets, and both should find a place on the board. But for too long, everything has been geared towards the labor relationship and a lot of inside baseball relationship, and not enough towards the nuts and bolts of how do we pay for this? How do we make sure the budgets are balanced year over year? How do we add money to our reserve fund year over year?
It's managing the operations, pure and simple. Yeah. You're managing the operations. It's not rocket science.
Well, it's not rocket science to us, but clearly we have not been able as a district to manage the funds that we were entrusted with in a fiduciarily responsible way. That's a long word, but yeah, the board has not been, they've been rubber stamping the budgets that have been brought to them and not asking those tough questions and not prioritizing the needs of our students and our teachers, educators, and our staff members to be able to put them first, and other priorities like redoing the website. If we can afford it, we can afford it. So that's something that just needs to take a back seat, and until our buildings are safe, our students and our educators and our staff, we're taking care of their mental and physical well-being while they're in schools. that we have all the basics, the fundamentals buttoned up, then we can do other things outside of that. But all we've done is deficit spend for the last 4 of the 5 years. And it would have been 5 out of 5 years, save a one-time transfer that they were able to glean because certain expenditures had been miscoded to the general fund instead of the OP EB fund. So we just, what we need to do is just get a handle on the financial piece of it. And I think the current board members have shown us that that's just not a possibility with who we have right now.
That's not their talent.
Work on them.
Yeah, that's not their talent.
Exactly.
And that's why it's important that the community is represented on the board. And right now, I think every interest group except for the community is having their interests met. And it's kind of like, what about the small business person in our community who's barely getting by, and they're watching, what they view probably as spendthriftness happening at their school district? What about the folks that are out there working in corporate America and paying, large tax bills, and then they're like, where'd the money go?
Where'd the money go?
Correct. We have to have a balanced budget at the end of the year. Our reserves need to be replenished, or we're going to be out of a job. But yet, year over year, this has been allowed to go on without consequences.
And it's worse than it seems, right? Because and this will be my last point on this, and let's move on to another topic. Because not only did we deficit spend, we deficit spent after cutting programs, after cutting custodians, after cutting, we still deficit spent $5+ million a year. After just, ripping apart our curriculum, our staffing, and, driving out some of our most experienced teachers, which obviously were some of our most highly paid teachers too, we still couldn't manage the budget, and to the tune of $5 million a year. And that's what drew down that unrestricted fund. And now COVID hit, which is what that rainy day fund is for, and we weren't able to respond. And, that's one of the main reasons why the buildings aren't open right now, is because we couldn't support the custodial needs until we hire back these people. It's still not going to happen. We're down 26 custodial staff since 2018. That's how many people we've laid off just in our custodial staff. That doesn't count nutrition services. That doesn't count, office admins or other admins or EAs or any of the other folks.
Anybody that makes the building run, that supports our teaching corps.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we've had a very experienced teaching corps, and that has been a kind of like a diamond in the rough that we have had as a competitive advantage for years. And a lot of these teachers are getting near retirement, so yeah.
Yeah, some of them definitely are. We're losing the ones in the middle, right? The experienced ones who aren't near retirement are a lot of the ones that are leaving for, I hope, all the right reasons for them personally. But we definitely, no teacher who's been with this district for 15 or 20 years wants to leave. They don't want to go somewhere else. So when they do,
it's hard.
That's a manager
new job. Yeah, it's hard. People don't leave jobs, they leave managers who aren't respecting them and who aren't meeting their needs.
Yeah.
And and that's why that superintendent hire is so important.
Yes, it is.
We have to get somebody there who is going to rally the troops.
All right, so let's move on to another topic. This is an interesting one. So some districts around us have articles out that they've received lump sums of COVID funds, and it turns out that we have also received similar funds. And the question is, what are your expectations as to how these funds are used and how the use of these funds are documented and shared with the community? Which I think this is a great question. So thank you to Ms. White for asking that question. Renee, let's start with you.
Always start with me. you know, I don't believe, I can't rely on any of the numbers that the school district itself is feeding us. If we
Yeah.
end up with COVID numbers, great, or COVID money, great. Right now, until we get placed into that situation, we don't know what they're doing. We don't know what they've applied for. We don't know
Fair.
where they would go with it.
Yeah.
We can't even be assured that they would be using it for something that they should be using it for, because there's absolutely no trust. So, um, you know, if and when we get the COVID funds, you know, obviously I would vote to be able to probably put them into our areas of greatest need, which would be decided upon, and you know, we would assess and look and that kind of thing. So at this point, you know, I haven't, at this point, the COVID monies is a dreamscape on the horizon. And if we get some, great. Either way, we're still going to be hurting.
Eric, how about you?
Yeah, so I can speak to it from the perspective of city. I know that the cities have received, you know, once the legislature approved, the cities received their disbursements and started receiving their disbursements in the third quarter this year. They only had a short period of time to spend that money, so literally till about mid-November. They can file for an extension beyond that, but they have a very narrow, you know, time frame. So a lot of municipalities have been forward spending off of other budget money,
Mm-hmm.
hopes of that money coming in. Now, assuming that the school districts were financed the exact same way, the hope is that the district has basically put that spending on some form of credit, and that as that COVID money comes in, that they'll be able to repay that. By the time we get there, unfortunately, a good chunk of this money is going to be gone. It would have been spent already. Now, if there was money, I would like to see almost all of it spent to ensure that schools are COVID ready. And if there was any left, I want to ensure that there is some excess testing capacity for our teaching corps, because they deserve to, you know, from a priority standpoint, if our teachers go down, the district goes down. So if we had a little extra money for some additional testing capacity, I would love to see that. Otherwise, sneeze guards, face masks, extra sanitizer for the teachers' classrooms, tissues, whatever the teachers need to work in a safe environment. I want to make sure that they have those tools for a safe environment.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I have some very specific things. I want to see them restore our custodial staff to at least 2018 levels, if not more, because COVID requires more. I want to see PPE, and just as you were saying, Eric, like plexiglass, like people being able to have face masks at school in case they forgot theirs at home. I want to see updates to transportation so that we are not packing our buses full of kids coming in, that we are more thoughtful and better prepared for transportation under COVID. I want to see our technology be improved. I have heard stories about teachers buying their kids headsets because they're in a shared environment and they don't have headsets that go over their ears like you have on right now, Eric. And so they're getting distracted by all the things that are happening behind them because, you know, they're living with other kids and parents all working in the same environment together. So those would be like the top three things. I want to make sure that our nutrition budget stays healthy and that the reserves that we have there stay 100% healthy. And those would be sort of my top priorities for that money. And if there's anything left over, then you know, we could talk about that. But I think this is CARES money that's starting to flow through, and from like the federal level, and also what Governor Walz did for our school districts at the state level. So those would be sort of my top priorities. Technology cannot be overrated. When our kids are in these distance learning programs, we gave them a laptop. They didn't even have Wi-Fi. So then we gave them a hotspot, but they don't have, you know, any sort of, you know, headset or anything that, so if my dog is barking in the background, you can still hear me talking. And so I would love to see a technology overhaul. So those would be my answers. And we're at time, but there is another question that if you guys have a few more minutes, we could keep going. It's a good one, and a nice one to end on. It's transparency. I'll give you the topic is transparency. The question is, would you be in favor of having all board meetings, listening sessions, and working sessions recorded and posted on the district website? I'll go first. Unequivocally, yes. I believe in full transparency. I am not a fan of the you have to turn in a question before noon the day of a board meeting, and so you can't react to what's being said there because you can't raise your hand and get called on. Like there's no moderator. Like there's so many ways that we could reimagine these school board meetings, even in COVID times, where it's a dialogue and not a monologue, right? So that would be my answer. Eric, why don't you go?
Yeah, obviously there are working sessions where the board is required to sit in session that's away from the public. Some issues that involve like teacher labor contracts, negotiations, some types of issues involving disciplinary actions that could be sensitive, it could identify children. There's going to be times where you have to go into closed session, but closed sessions should be very, very rare. We should always err on the side of putting everything out in the sunshine so that the public can see what's going on. And a large chunk of this, and the board in Minneapolis did a really good job at this. Sometimes you just have to have frequent, particularly during times of crisis, discussion sessions where it's open to the public and it's the public that's doing the talking.
Just like we're doing
the listening. Yeah, we're doing the listening. And it's not even just answering questions. It's just, it just may be person after person going up to the microphone and just, voicing their heart.
Yeah.
As their representative, they deserve to hear that. They deserve for us to listen to what they're saying. So listening sessions for me will be a priority. I really hope that my peers will gravitate to doing listening sessions as well. I can't be at all of them, obviously, but there should be enough of us and enough listening sessions that the public should never, ever feel like they're not being heard.
And they should be responded to, right? So if we have a listening session, then we come back with, here's what we heard, and here's how we're responding to what we heard, right? I've been to tons of listening sessions in World Cafes in this district where parents and community members and came together, students came together, and we provided input. Start times would be a perfect example of this. I've been to so many listening sessions about start times, never got anything back out of them other than thanks for attending. And that was the end of the discussion. So a listening session doesn't hold any weight if there's not any action that comes out of that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right.
And so, Renee, I know you have some very passionate opinions about meeting minutes and how we're communicating with the community at a board level too. So please share.
Yeah, probably just more experience. I don't know how much passion this time of night I can muster up on this, but this is a really interesting area, and I do believe that our listening sessions, work sessions, and all of those things need to be audio and videotaped. And I will use the city of Crystal as an example. And recently what they did was they did start to do taping of the work sessions, but they were audio tape only, not videotape. And what happens when you actually tape like a board meeting or a council meeting, those meetings are indexed to the agenda so that if you're interested in specific items, you can go right to them and you can listen to what it is you really have a passion about or an interest for. at the City of Crystal, the work sessions, and I don't even know if the listening sessions are taped. Those are not at all indexed. They're not indexed to an agenda. They're just sort of a streaming voice event where you really sort of lose the nuances, as one can tell, because none of you can see my face and how expressive it is when I talk. So I would want to see that we invest in both the video and the audio aspect of it and create an online library, because as Eric had also said, when it comes to listening sessions, you're not going to have all 7 board members sitting in that listening session. But what you can have is a video library where then board members can go off and look at what happened at the listening sessions. We also need to expand it to any of the very important meetings that go on. The only thing, and Eric, you had talked about this, is that there are very clearly defined laws that speak of those types of meetings that would be private and behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And those would be personnel and labor issues, but everything else should be done in the open. In today's world, we should be able to view it sort of as many times as we want to. So not only do I support it, I really want to see it done right in our school district. That's what I would like to see. I want to see it indexed to issues. I want it to be extremely user-friendly to the people of the community, and along those lines.
Well, I think we've hit the topics that have come from our folks. I put out a last call for topics. If there's anything else that you guys want us to cover, I know we're a few minutes over, so we can go ahead and wrap it up. If there isn't anything else, we will have, and I'll just make this announcement on election eve, November 2nd, we will have another roundtable like this for people who are still undecided. And if you have folks that you know that haven't voted yet, that are undecided, please, please, please invite them to that final discussion with us. That's Monday night at 7:30. And again, we're posting, if you're unclear about, it's going to be different credentials than you got in with today. So if you still need that information, we're happy to share it. Otherwise, it is posted on change281.com. And you can go there under upcoming events and get those credentials from there and share them with other folks. The whole point of Change 281 was to reach as many people as we could and get them informed that the picture that the board is painting, that the administration is painting, is not what's actually happening. And that's why we're all running. That's why we feel so passionate about getting people with financial chops on the board, not just educational, which is super important, but overrepresented at this point. So I see lots of thank yous coming through. It's our pleasure to be here for you. This is the level of transparency and dialogue that you can expect out of us as board members. And I want to thank Eric and Renee for your time tonight. I want to thank everybody who.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy, for hosting.
Yeah, we got one more before election day, and let's really turn out the vote. I'm so excited to serve with you guys on the board. I hope that is a reality for all 3 of us. And again, thank you to all our participants tonight for your great questions. And if you come up with anything in the meantime, you can email change4, not the number 4, but change, FOR 281 @gmail.com. We'll answer your questions, and we'll just keep this dialogue going all the way through election day and beyond. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.